Hey there, everybody. Today's Friday. I have just gotten over, I guess, not really. I'm in the stages of recuperating from a pretty nasty trifecta of a head cold and then a sinus infection, an ear infection, and an upper respiratory infection. And yeah, it's the first time I've been sick in a couple of years, which is a tough thing to a tough track record to break. I have not enjoyed it, to say the least. Although I am glad that the local birds have left me such an enormous bounty of the autumn olive fruits on the bush that I find tastiest. So I have been snacking on those to try and get myself healthier enough to at least speak for long enough to do this video and chat with all of you. So I promised a video talking about market and the math and how we have been making our decisions to go to market, as well as some of the thoughts we have for next year. So let's get into it. This past year, we were in 2 weekly markets, one in the town that we live in, North Berwick, Maine, and one in the next town over, South Berwick. There was a third market put on by the same group that runs those 2 markets. That one was in the tourist town of Wells, and we did attend a few of those markets, but where this is mostly about some of the math that goes into how we're considering which markets to attend next year and what our experiences were. I don't feel that the handful of times we were at a third weekly market really is germane to the conversation or has enough empirical data behind it to back that up or be a large portion of this video. So some quick things. With our attendance at those 2 weekly markets that we were in, plus the handful of other weekly markets in Wells, and the attendance of 2 special events, let's call them. One was the town event called Millfest, which is the annual party that our town of North Berwick throws, which has vendors and bounce house and food trucks and all kinds of things. And the second was a farmers market event put on by one of the Tractor Supply Company stores that is close to where Nicole works. And between the weekly markets and those 2 special events, we did cover costs for going to market this year. And for the second year of a business to cover their operating expenses is something that I am aware should not be sneezed at. But I will also say that I was slightly disappointed that it did take us all season to recoup the costs of going to those markets. So we'll be looking for a way to more effectively capitalize on the returns that are possible from doing different markets. Those 2 markets we were in, North and South Berwick, were the same 2 markets weekly that we were in last year. And part of our decision to do those 2 was that I, as a function of who I am, need some kind of regularity in schedule. I'm okay at setting schedules for myself and following through on tasks and things of that nature, but left to my own devices, I would be a hermit in the woods, and you all would be pretty much my only means of social contact outside of the handful of neighbors that I hang out with and a few of the friends in the area. And I would not have met as many awesome, lovely, wonderful people as I have through doing those markets. And that is both a commentary on the wonderful neighbors and community that we have in this area, and also the wonderful vendors that I do consider my friends. I love you guys. So if you are like me and find that having a standard obligation or a weekly obligation or any kind of definitive scheduling appointment that happens on a recurring basis and you find it useful to do those sorts of things to help yourself stay on track or to continue your ability to socialize and fulfill your social needs, your interpersonal needs, I say go for it. It's not a mistake to value things other than money. That said, there are times doing exactly that where we decided to go to those markets and remain in those markets for a second year, despite knowing that the return on investment was not as great as it could be. There were definitely periods of time where the experience was frustrating, and it can be challenging if you are that type of person to maintain your composure or your interest in going. Certainly, we had a few market vendors that dropped out due to a lack of customer traffic. And so take those things into consideration if you are deciding to go to market. Are there periods of time where you can capitalize on flushes of planting interest, particularly in the early spring, in the early summer, and the early fall? Are there a handful of events that you could go to instead of a weekly obligation where you would be able to offload or sell through a good portion of your stock or what you are capable of bringing to market? If that is what you are aiming for, that is another factor to consider. And so I encourage you to explore that. It doesn't all have to be about money, particularly if you are following in our footsteps as far as growing goes, or as far as cultivation of new crops, or the propagation of interesting and fun plants. Are drivers of cost for heading to market the thing that underpins what the minimum recoupable amount of money per plant is? All of those cost drivers for us are the insurance and the equipment and the attendance fees, basically the registration fees for the market. And so because of the way that we are growing plants and because of the way that we collect pots and substrate for potting those things in, we are able to make it so that our costs are more easily recoupable through even lower than wholesale pricing on certain plants. And so I think that that's compelling. I think that if you're able to keep your production costs low and the only real drivers of cost for you are fees and insurance needs and possibly the infrastructure to bring those things to market. So whether it's a trailer on the back of your car or a pickup truck like we have, or the trunks of your cars and multiple trips, those costs do factor in, and I encourage you to track those, what your gas mileage might be or what your average spend per week to getting to and from market is. Those sorts of things are certainly a factor that you should calculate in as far as figuring out what your break-even point is and what your profit margins can be. One of the factors that should be in your calculations when you're deciding whether to go to market or which markets to go to is the number of visitors to a given market, even if it's on an average. Many market managers or the folks who run markets will be keen to tell you how great their attendances are. The more people you can get in front of per event, the higher your likelihood of a sale becomes. It's kind of a formula of the cost per attendance times the number of visitors times your close rate, I guess, which is kind of a nebulous number, and you're not going to know what it is until after the effect. But those three numbers kind of come into a sort of cost per access or a cost per visitor who interacts with your table. And that can help to determine how much money you need to make back or what your success can look like at one of those markets. So, for example, it cost us about $150 to attend the North Berwick market. That's just the market fees itself. But for that market, $150 got us access to approximately 102 people, working out to be $1.47 per visitor, which means that we are paying a premium to see each of those people and have the opportunity for them to interact with us and possibly purchase a plant. Conversely, for the same cost, South Berwick saw 241 people, which works out to approximately 62 cents per person who had the opportunity to interact with us at our table. Certain larger markets may see upwards of 500 to 1,000 people at a given time. Many of those are going to be on weekends. Weekday markets are a tough sell for a number of people. And in the state of Maine, at least, there are only a handful that still operate during the week. Mondays and Tuesdays are particularly infamous for low traffic. And the further you get into the fall and school year season portion of the summer, the more that weekday things will intersect with other people's lives. So you may find that your customer base drops off as marching band or school sports or fall sport programs start back up. There is less time bandwidth for people with their families to be visiting farmers markets because there are just so many more obligations. And so one of the things that we have been thinking about is going to a higher proportion of the weekend markets in some of the busier or larger market areas so that we can maximize our exposure level and increase our visit count per dollar spent. And so, for example, here we have a calendar that Nicole printed out for me, and I have been putting down the groups of markets that will be going on for various months, as well as special events like the Acton Fair, or once we get into September, fairs in Oxford, the Common Grounds Fair, Farmington and Cumberland and Freiburg. All of these are slightly more agriculturally themed events, rather than something that is a, say, like market gardener based farmers market event. And so what we have are a number of markets that have a higher proportion of visits per event, and we are looking at doing a cycle of maybe every other week visiting one or two of these markets to try and get our products and our faces and our message in front of a more varied or different group of people. It's kind of that permaculture principle where the greater the number of interactions you can foster, the greater the chances of a beneficial interaction and a pattern of reinforcement that can occur. And so by kind of gaming out which ones we can go to and which ones seem like better investments of our time as we go through, these are kind of the ways that we are thinking about attendance in a market that may or may not be as beneficial as I like, but are an opportunity to spread further and sink our roots down into possibly more productive spaces. So, for something like Portsmouth, for example, they will generally see something like 500 people on a Saturday, and to attend even just one would be $25. And so for $25 at 500 people, that works out to roughly less than 3 cents per interaction. And if we are thinking about what the potential return on a single interaction is, if a person that we meet at a market like that, who cost us 3 cents to see, purchases a plant for $5, where the seed was collected here and the substrate was composted here and the pots were donated to us, that is a huge return on investment. So while I think that there is a serious utility in meeting our neighbors and engaging with our community and finding those people that around us are receptive to our message and I guess amenable to being friends with us, that utility, while great, is not as effective at paying bills or growing the capability of this project to sustain my wife and I. There is a consideration to move towards slightly more profitable avenues of engagement. And so these are just a few of our thoughts. When I was thinking about this video, I really didn't want to call it a mistake. I don't view going to a less monetarily productive market as a mistake. There are far more valuable things in this life than just money and a sense of community and those opportunities to meet people who are truly the loveliest is too great an opportunity to pass up. I don't want you folks to think that the idea of going to a market because you want to interact with your neighbors or because you want to meet with the people who are potentially able to benefit from your ecological reconstruction and regeneration. Those are valuable and should not be overlooked unless... No, there's no unless. Those factors shouldn't be overlooked. You should be considering how, as a business, as a grower, as a regenerative grower, as a permaculturist, as someone who is ecologically minded and wants to build better as far as agricultural or propagation practices go. Finding those people in your community, finding those friends, finding those interpersonal assets is an important part of the support structure that you're going to need in your projects. And so I don't think that the value of those kinds of interactions can really be summed up in a cost-benefit analysis, because it's wobbly, wishy-washy math, and your calculations of its value may be different from ours, but I do still perceive the value there. And so I guess I'm going to wrap this up. But I want you folks to consider what you need as a grower, what you need as a person, and what you need as a business when you are making these decisions to go to market. If you have questions or comments that you feel add to this discussion, I would love for you to drop them in the comments. Not only does it really help my psychological well-being to know that you folks are listening or engaging, or feel like I'm bringing some kind of value to the table that underpins the reason why you keep coming back, or if you think that there's something I missed and other folks on this channel and in this community could benefit from your particular insights, I truly encourage you to share those. Let's figure out how to grow better together. So those are my thoughts. This is kind of our so far right now plan for next year, and I'm sure that will evolve as the season progresses and as winter occurs and we're able to do a little bit more research on some of the other ag fairs or interesting opportunities to possibly present or share notes or talks in some of the other growers' circles. But yeah, till next time, thanks for watching. Happy planting.